Hi, my name's Tony and I'm from the SIC company, and today I'm going to talk to you about the brand new SIC XRS. So the SIC XRS, we finally have it. The wait has been some time. It's felt like forever. We've seen images of it for some time out there, but finally it's landed in the UK and we have it at our test centre. Very rarely does anything arrive here really without me kind of getting involved in the unboxing with the rest of the team, kind of excited to see it, whatever else. But yeah, I wasn't there for the unveiling, if you like, of the XRS. Everyone else here kind of jumped on it, wanted to get it out of the box straight away and have a look. And as a result, when I saw it for the first time, it sat in our rack of race boards here. We have a fair number of them here for people to come down and try, of which the XRS forms part of now. And it just stood out. It stood out. One, the colorway, you know, it's fairly striking. It's quite obvious. It's an SIC XRS just from this really bold kind of clear cut finish they have in how they define the colorways and break it up across the board's length. But its proportions is just how striking it is. And to see it, particularly in its side profile, just how refined and low volume the very nose of the board is as it works its way back. It's kind of got this hump and then it kind of smooths away again. It is a beautiful thing to look at. And the lines of this board are really something else. And yeah, as I say, to see it for the very first time, it was, whoa. You know, it stood out by a long, long way. On closer inspection and then paddling the board now quite a few times, and a few of us have paddled it here down at the SUPCO in Southampton and really kind of shared notes on it. And it's quick. It's quick and incredibly stable. And that's kind of the big takeaway from this board. But look, let's run you through from the nose down to the tail as we do in all of our videos here at the SUP company. And the nose on the XRS is very, very low volume. It's very refined in the, I would say, probably the first quarter of the overall board length. It gives the impression of a very, very small nose. In some respects, we have spoken about that we feel probably the way the board runs is they could have lopped a little bit more off as well. But it's a really, really striking finish. It's also, on the underside, very subtle. There's this bulbous kind of nose to it, which penetrates the water. It sits slightly lower than the rest of the board, kind of parting the way and developing this efficiency over then defining how the water flows over the rest of the board's length. And it generates a lot of lift fairly early on. But then that volume starts to build and the board quickly fills out to roughly, I'd say the average overall width of this board is nearer 19 inches as opposed to the 22 inches in the main standing area. And that means you end up with a very slender nose, one that's obviously offering lots and lots of performance, limited drag. There's limited volume in the nose in terms of how it's going to be affected in terms of a sideways chop or windage is fairly reduced on the board overall, but the volume starts to build increasingly as you work your way back to the main standing area. The rails themselves, extremely slab-sided. That gives, if you like, the opportunities for the water to kind of hug the board and hold it upright. And it leads a lot to this feel of overall stability and confidence that you get in the XRS very, very early on. And the performance in this board overall is easily accessible. It is just there. You pretty much get 90, I'd say 90% at least out of this board in terms of what it will deliver straight out of the box. You don't have to go off finding it. You don't have to try to kind of come to terms with it and understand where the board works best. It just delivers straight out of the crate. As you work your way back down though, into the main standing area, you see this dugout and the dugout looks huge. And while the dugout is just under 6 inches in terms of depth, and you end up with this really secure feel, you actually, given the overall volume of this board, you actually sit just above the waterline. It's not a true dugout in the sense of that you're below the waterline, which we were quite surprised by. We didn't expect that from the imagery that we'd seen prior to having the board and paddling it. It does sit slightly higher, but We are wondering if it was slightly lower still as a dugout, if the stability would be increased even more. Yes, you do away with some of the volume, but on the whole, you end up with a really, really secure feel to this board. A nice feature in terms of the main standing area, you've got a leashing point forwards here, leashing point on the tail as well, but the handles, there's no traditional kind of handle. There certainly isn't the traditional SIC handle that we see on the rest of the range. This recessed handle with this bar-like feel to it is built within the rail. So that gives a very clean standing area that your footwork is totally unimpeded, and you very, very easily know where the limits and the edges of the board are because of the dugout and the way that it's structured. The handles in terms of carrying, they're sat within inside the rail themselves. They're quite comfortable. They're not overly deep, but they're certainly comfortable enough for a beach start to run the board down, or in terms of moving it, portaging it from your launching point down to the water's edge and so on. But it's really, really nice, clean aesthetic overall that is really, you don't see it, to be honest, in any other board out there. The main standing area, it was quite unusual to paddle in comparison to other boards, and unusual, I'd say, in a good way. So often with flat water performance race boards, we find ourselves walking uphill, if you like, as we go towards the tail of the board, working our way out the dugout. That's not the case with the XRS. You almost kind of walk yourself downhill. There's this slight drop on the deck as it works its way to the tail. And the tail is extreme. It's not only extreme in its width, it measures on this, the 22-inch wide model, 19 inches in width, but it's extreme in its kind of this open transom, if you like, that you'd see on a sailing boat or a dinghy or a much, much larger performance yacht. And it gives you kind of lots of confidence as you work your way down the board. You're working your way downhill, as I say, and with the rails, you just have this really secure, locked-in feel. It's also, as you sink the tail on this board, it's very gradual. Nothing happens with any great surprise. It just is quite intuitive underfoot. And yeah, you just grow in confidence in this. Yes, almost within one or two paddles, you have a very quick sense as to what the board is going to do under your feet and how it's going to work and really how you can get the best out of it, because it just kind of delivers, as I say, straight out of the crate. But look, let's take the board and roll it over onto its rail so we can see the underside. In terms of the board itself and its weight overall, this board being the 14 by 22 model, you're talking 12.6, just over 12.6 kilos overall in weight. That's not the lightest. This is SIC's Superfly construction, so it's certainly their lightest construction, but it's not the lightest performance flat water board that we're seeing on the market today. But it's there are pros and cons to having some board weight to it, in that extremely lightweight is it going to accelerate very quickly off the line. But if you have still got some board weight and some mass, then, you know, as you've got that up to speed, it's not going to slow too readily either. It's going to carry on and run, whereas a very, very lightweight board is going to stop quicker because it is that little bit lighter as well. You can just see now just how clean the underside of the board is in terms of its finish overall. We'll make out that slight bulbous area on the very forefront of the nose for you, so you can see that just on camera. But that gives way very quickly to what at first glance looks like a completely flat bottom. It is not. There is a very subtle concave that runs the entire underside of this board down just to ahead of the fin box, and then it goes flat with a very clean, hard edge finish to the tail. That single concave is providing a reasonable amount of secondary stability in this board. That, combined with the overall height and then just how sheer and slab-sided this board is, a lot of stability. That, combined with this 19-inch wide tail, is, yeah, it's just unreal. As a 22-inch wide board, you know, we could confidently, I would suggest here at the test center, somebody that's looking for a 24-inch wide board from other brands, we could confidently put them out on this and know at 22 inches in width, they would have a positive experience and come away being surprised that they've just paddled a 22-inch wide board. The board is that stable. but runs all the way back down towards the US fin box. Interestingly, the board, in terms of its overall rocker line, it starts to ease the rocker line in the back of the board. As you see the board sat flat on the water, you can then just start to see the rocker line overall, slightly raised in the nose, but that bulbous area of the nose is kind of counteracting that, and you're just generating lots of lift there. But as you start to come towards the fin box, the overall rocker line increases and it starts to lift on the tail. And that's really just helping the board release as you're paddling forwards at speed. So the SIC XRS, who is it for? Well, we've paddled it thus far in, to be honest with you, reasonably benign conditions here at our test center as we have. Very interested to see how it'll handle moderate chop. We have played with it behind a boat a little bit as well, in just some boat wake, if you like. It picks up, it glides, it really does ride chop extremely well. We've run it across some chop also. It's stable, it still remains quick, and it's just the amount of confidence that this board gives a paddler underfoot was really, really surprising, but also encouraging for somebody out there looking for something that's relatively flat water focused. So yeah, the XRS is here. Thanks for watching our video. If you've got any questions about what you've seen, why not give us a call in the shop or head over to thesupco.com. To stay up to date though with all of our videos, well, make sure you subscribe up here and hit the notification bell. But to see our next video, well, take a look up here.